Hello, everyone. I'm Ashley Joyner, and I am the director of Are You Proud? I'm very proud to be a part of All Out's Undistant Digital Festival. And I'm joined by Jason Jones and PJ Samuels. PJ, do you want to start by introducing yourself, letting the viewers know who you are and what you do?
Hi, I'm PJ, and I am a poet, an activist, an exile. I like to stir up trouble. Well, not really, just to question institutions and norms as they don't apply to me. Yeah.
And Jason Jones.
Hi, everyone. I'm really honored and pleased to be here this evening. My name is Jason Jones, and I'm a human rights defender originally from Trinidad. I'm half Trinidadian and half English, so I'm Tringlish. I live currently here in London, and I've been working in LGBT human rights for 33 years. And I have the distinction of being the only person on the planet who has changed the laws in both the United Kingdom and Trinidad and Tobago to benefit LGBT people. In 2018, I won a landmark decision to decriminalize homosexuality there and remove the British colonial era buggery law that blighted our nation.
So, Jason, we'll get to your big triumph later. I just wanted to start a little bit easier, actually. I feel like at the moment, a lot of people are potentially becoming politically active for the first time, especially with things that we're seeing with Black Lives Matter. And I just wondered if there was moments for either of you where you remember that really politicized you for the first time, or where you became politically active. Either of you can go first.
Well, I guess for me, it was when I first came to London in 1985. I was 21, and I was escaping endemic homophobia. I mean, homophobia that was so serious that I couldn't even walk down the streets of Port of Spain without people shouting homophobic epithets at me. So, arriving in London in 1985, there was a very vibrant LGBTQ plus scene. There was the Lesbian and Gay Center in Calcross Street. There was, things happening everywhere, fashion, music, everything was very gay focused. And then, of course, Margaret Thatcher and the Conservative government passed Section 28. And I became very involved with those marches and went on those marches. And that really lit the fuse for my activism for the next 33 years. So I think, sometimes we have to look at the pushback as really being a way to push forward. For many of us, our activism comes from, being thrown out of the Stonewall Bar or being pressured by an external force. And I think COVID-19 and what we're seeing around the world with the rise of right-wing authoritarianism and a pushback against many of the wins that we've had over the last 20 years, I'm really hoping that with this digitalization of Pride 2020, that we will get back to the origins of Pride, which was protest and not pretty parades.
And PJ, do you remember a particular moment where you became politically active?
I can discuss the moments when I started, agitating in England in particular. But I kind of have the feeling that being a Black woman, you're born politically active. You don't get the choice to not be politically active. And if you're actively agitating or if you're just existing, you cannot escape the politics. But yeah, the point was after I had, well, actually it was before, when I became a refugee here, even before my status was regularized in that regard, there was just so much that was wrong. There was just so much that was unacceptable. And I lived in Wolverhampton, and when I moved to London, I just find it strange how in a place where everything is supposed to be okay, how much was not.
Mm-hmm.
And I became particularly moved because a lot of people that I was around in a similar position as me, had less of a relationship with English language because English language was probably a fourth or a fifth language. And a lot of the things that I was challenged by was just really people trying to twist stories in ways that were convenient. And I thought, if this can be made so hard for me, how hard is it for somebody else who's struggling with the language, as well as the cultural barriers, as well as the racial barriers, as well as the gender barriers? It's just, there are just so many hurdles, and it really got to me.
Mm-hmm. And what active steps did you take early on? Because I think there's a lot of people, especially people that are becoming politically active for the first time, that can become really overwhelmed with people that have the correct jargon or the experience to understand what steps to take in terms of community building and things like that. But there are a lot of people that don't really know where to start. So I wondered, you've both achieved such great things now, but I wonder if there was anything early on that you did that could be useful for people that are just becoming politically active.
Well, I formed Weather the Storm, which is a support group for LGBTQ refugees. But it's difficult for me to say how one should approach it, because I kind of think, being an exile, I have less resources available to myself than someone else who probably was born here, who would probably have more access to the institutions. So I kind of think I was a bit of a left fielder. So I got together with other left fielders, and we shared. One of the first things that I thought was important was that the people that I was supporting was using methods that are familiar to us. You know what I mean? If we're from traditions of oral traditions, then the material that we're sharing, make it oral. You know what I mean? Validate who we are as we are, where we are, because there's so much pressure to normalize into another culture, which is really just sort of erasure of who you are and invisibilizing of the very essence and the core of you, which can then really suck at your strength. So for me, it was about reminding people who they are, reminding the greatness that is in our bloodline, reminding people the strength that brought you here, all that you had to go through, all that you left, all that you lost, and here you are. So I got together with people, formed a group, approached organizations that I know are already in line with that, but this approach around support. And so I suppose one of the first things you need to do is find other people, find organizations that have something that is aligned with whatever project you're interested in, and form coalitions, have a clear direction of what it is you're trying to achieve, and then get a team, which doesn't necessarily mean a team to support you, but just get people who will support your ideas in whatever way. Because initially what we got was sort of just space to meet. Yeah. You know what I mean? So whatever little you have, take that, build on it, and it will grow.
Mm-hmm. And I imagine it was amazing what came out of those conversations, because I know when the Gay Liberation Front was starting in the 1970s, they took on what the Women's Lib were doing, which was consciousness raising groups, which was just like-minded people coming together and just discussing their lives to start with. Yeah. And out of those conversations, people started to understand their own oppression. Mm-hmm. And in many ways, people aren't even aware of the ways that they have been or are oppressed. Yeah.
Yes.
So just that collective understanding, I think, is something that I think a lot of people are just coming to for the first time. And PJ, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about you telling your own story, because within the film, your poem, particularly at the end of the film, has had such a strong resonance with many of the people that have viewed it. As an artist or as an activist, what is the importance of telling your story?
Because, the personal is political, and there's a saying that as long as the hunter tells the story, I'm not saying it right. Help, help. But if the hunter is the one who tells the story, then the lion will seem like. I'm paraphrasing here, but I think you know where I'm going. Yeah. So there's a little bit of you needing to validate yourself. We're not seeing ourselves, and we're not always understood, and we're always sort of identified as strange other, and there's this persistent othering and persistent orientalization of who you are, and there's a hierarchy of culture. So we're almost taught that where I come from is something I should be ashamed of. Things that I like, the food that I eat, I am almost being taught shame. The language, the very language I speak, I am taught to be ashamed of it. It's invalidated as it's not a language, it's broken English. So I have to come at things from a place where I have to tell who I am, because that's important, not just to me, but to others who look like me, who think like me, who feel like me, who live in a skin that looks like the skin that I live in, who live in a fat black body, knowing that we do not necessarily have to answer to the shame that is being fed to us by colonization. We're more than that. And we can represent ourselves. We don't need people to speak for us. We don't need somebody else to give us a voice. We have a voice. We were born with a voice, and we can speak it. We can shout it. We can curse it. We can swear it. So that's important to me. And then the other thing as well about telling my story is that there's a lot of things that are a lot of oppression that is wrapped in privacy. The idea that you're not supposed to tell the family secrets, or you're not supposed to tell the church secrets, or you're not supposed to tell, the whole idea that there's a whole notion of privacy that is given to me, particularly as a woman, that is just oppression. It's just a curtain behind which people are then allowed to abuse me in various ways, whether it's society, whether it's patriarchy, whether it's religion. It's just you're wrapped in all these secrets, and as a woman you're not meant to talk about the things that happen to you because you're meant to be ashamed. And I will not own that. I don't get to own privacy, because if there's any sort of authority that wants the facts of my life, particularly when going through the process of asylum, the things that I have to share that were precious and private and I should have been allowed to keep exclusively mine, I did not get that choice. I do not get a choice of privacy except when it benefits somebody else. So I don't want it. I will tell everything. I want to tell the everything.
Well, we're very
Don't just give me privacy when it benefits you. So I'm going to talk all of it, all of the story.
Thank you, PJ. Jason, I imagine you've had similar experiences with your activism spanning across the UK and Jamaica.
Trinidad.
Trinidad.
I'm a Jamaican.
Jade's from Jamaica. You're from Trinidad. You've even got the bedspread behind you.
There's Erin. That's the Jamaica flag. Oh, we're out here repping, man. Sorry.
But what kind of has the response to your activism, Jason, been the same in the UK to Trinidad?
I really want to echo what PJ was saying about decolonization of the narrative, and that stands for all minority communities. And we're just about to launch a new human rights organization in Trinidad and Tobago, which will have desks in New York, Miami, Toronto, and London, where there are large concentrations of Caribbean people. What we have to look at in this discussion about decolonization of the narrative, which is very much of the zeitgeist right now with the toppling of statues and us finding a way to make sure that history is properly representative of us, and as PJ said, is not always spoken by the hunter. What I have found over the last 33 years is two elements that are very key. One of them PJ touched on, which is the oral history and the ownership of our history, which is why Are You Proud is such an important document, because it documents our history. And I think that we don't use these mediums enough, and we don't focus enough on where we have come from to direct where we're going. And secondly, I was very honored 2 years ago to receive the inaugural Elders Award from Gay Star News. And I was the first queer person of color to receive that award. And as an elder,
we should just address that first of all.
I know. This is why I'm wearing a hat. I'm trying to hide the eldership. No, the thing about our elders, the LGBT community is very youth focused. We are a very youthful culture. We're very about the zeitgeist. We're very about now, TikTok, Instagram, etc., etc. And I fear that the stories of our elders and this history is just being frittered away, and we're losing a lot of this history. And on top of that, of course, there was the AIDS Holocaust. We lost a generation of gay men who were our storytellers. They were our ballet dancers, our choreographers, our filmmakers. We lost this huge element of our past and our history and our storytellers. So I think moving forward, particularly with 2020 being off of the parade route and in our homes and on our laptop screens, I think this gives us an opportunity to really stop and take stock and remember our past and honor our past and honor the people that laid down their very lives for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, also just in terms of LGBTQ plus history here in the UK, like so much of it would have been destroyed pre-67, maybe even after 67, because it was used as evidence against people.
Yes.
Whether that was destroyed by the police or the LGBTQ plus people themselves. Just a point about Pride's being cancelled this year, Jason. Now that we're not on the parade, the march, we're not on the streets, and a lot of us are trying to show our pride whilst in isolation. What do you hope that people start to take stock of and start to look at differently when it comes to prides?
I think we have to take a very hard look at with 2020 being off of the parade route. The focus was, what am I going to wear? Who am I going with? Who is the star attraction on the main stage? And the very important messaging, the very important protest aspect of Pride has literally gone. It has just been a roving street party with a disco soundtrack. And, Pride was always a protest. In the film, I said very clearly, from my first Pride in the early 80s, you knew you were going there to be angry. You were going there to protest. You knew that this was a joke. When you got to Kennington Park, then yeah, we could have a laugh and have a good time. But on the parade, on the march route, that was a very serious thing. This was a protest march. This wasn't a fun thing. There was no music. I think we have to take stock this 2020 and say, okay, we need to where we started. The summer of '69 was not pretty. It was bricks and cars burning and blood being spilled. That's how we have what we have today, blood being spilled. And I think we have to take stock of what's happening around the world. There are still 73 countries, 72. Gabon just voted to remove the discriminatory buggery law today. Yay! Over 70 countries still criminalize LGBT people, and 10 of those with the death penalty. There are people in Indonesia being lashed and whipped. There are people being thrown off buildings in the Middle East. There are people being hanged in Iran. I don't see how we can continue with this party thing with that going on. We're leaving people behind around the world. And we in the global north have to take stock of that and do more and make sure that our parliamentarians do more and our NGOs do more so that everybody comes along to let's have a party when all of us are free.
PJ, when we spoke for the interview for the Are You Proud, you talked about how UK Black Pride had a very different atmosphere, and the fact that you were able to speak on stage about your experience. It seems as though there is far more intimate at UK Black Pride, and I wonder how we can take things like that, or take that kind of structure and implement that on mainstream prides, because there just isn't anywhere to discuss our experiences on that big parade. Moving forward, I think big prides, especially in the UK, seem to they are predominantly white, predominantly gay. With the recent focus on Black Lives Matter, how do we side the LGBT movement with other movements, whether it be Black Lives Matter or the climate crisis? How do we start to look intersectionally at our movement so that we're collectively working together? Do you have any thoughts on that, any suggestions how we start to
Well, I mean, I would have suggestions, but I almost feel like as a Black woman, it's not my place. That's something that the white people who are planning it need to do. The idea that integration is something that the oppressed is going to make happen is a notion that I don't particularly that I think it's not a right one. And while I want to support the people who are disengaged, and I'm willing to lobby and have a discussion, I really think that the whole idea of looking to the people who are suffering the most as the people with solution is a sort of a recurring theme that doesn't really help. Racism is a white issue. White people created it. White people need to work on removing it. Disenfranchisement is a white issue. White people are disenfranchising others. They need to look at that. The whole idea of gaslighting people when they speak their oppression is a very white thing. So when I spend my time, energy, and labor, intellectually and emotionally, offering solutions, it's just for somebody to go, oh, you ain't really going through that anyway. That we've been experiencing that whole time. So no, I'm not willing to offer solutions, because the people who are around very, very much know what the solutions are. They very, very much can open those things and involve people as much as they want to. It's a choice that they are making. And these things have been discussed over and over and over again by Black people at various levels. So I'm not even going to have much to say on that in particular.
Rightly so. I think
solutions are not difficult to come by. Everybody's discussed them over and over and again at length. They're not being implemented because those in power are choosing not to implement them.
No, you're right, PJ. So I probably phrased that question wrong in when I was trying to collate Black Lives Matter movement and the climate change matter. So I apologize for that. I wasn't looking for...
No need to apologize. It's, yeah.
No, but you were right.
These are all intersectional issues. And when I sort of exist at the intersection of being, Black, fat, female presenting, queer, Christian with dreadlocks, I don't think the solutions are ever going to come from me. And I think we've written over and over and over again. So what I do is hold space and hold my people tight, that we have the strength to carry on, to extract joy from all the misery they're trying to heap on us. And that's what I think my energy is for, to serve my people.
Well, you only have to look at the leadership of the major LGBT organizations around the world. There's only one major LGBT organization that has a person of color leading it, and that's, of course, Phil at Kaleidoscope Trust. All of the other organizations are run by white, tertiary educated, cisgender, middle-class people. So, we don't get it looking at the decision-making process. We don't sit at those tables. We don't get a vote at the bargaining table. And that's where it has to change. The shift has to happen there, where the power is. We need people who are not just sitting at those tables and being gaslit and being promised things that never show up. We need to be at the bargaining table with the power of decision making.
And that's just it, because when you get involved, you start hearing all you get, and I have tried over and over again, when you enter the decision-making processes of these organizations, including Pride, it's just an exercise in making white corporate Britain comfortable.
Yep.
That's it. And you'll have meeting after meeting telling you how to behave, what not to do, who you're not supposed to piss off, not using that language, but effectively it is an exercise in keeping capitalism happy.
Yes. Yeah. And while of course money makes the world go round, and we have to be financially viable, and the work that I do has a dollars and cents value to it, which I do all of that work myself. No LGBT NGO or the government of the UK has helped me, and I was removing a British colonial era law, yet nobody helped me. because I wasn't, I wasn't doing the right things and saying the right things and kissing the right behinds.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you do, there's always pushback. It's as if people don't want to be politically aligned with most things that are pushing for progress of Black people.
Yeah. Unless,
it's
unless
yes.
they get kickboxing out saying, oh, yes, look, we did that for the Black people. Hurrah, look at us, how fabulous we are. Yay, us white people. I get that constantly. People who do want to offer help to me want to stick their brand on it or want to stick their nose in my business or make decisions about my strategy in my home country. That's not the way it works. Sorry, no.
Jason, we've talked at length about the work that you're doing. And something that Michael Cashman said in the film that just kind of comes to mind about how, especially when Stonewall was forming and outrage will kind of, it appeared that they were working against each other, but they were actually creating this kind of funnel.
Yes.
It just comes to mind that his comment was that no one has the rights to the grounds in which we're fighting, right? We're all fighting for the same thing.
Yes.
So how do we navigate spaces when people have different methods of trying to achieve the same thing? How do we continue to work collectively, but also stay in our own lane and stay focused on what we believe is the right thing?
I don't think we should worry about the work being collective or the work being directive or there being, kumbaya, sit around the campfire, relationship between us all. I'm very glad that people are driving towards the same destination in different vehicles, because if your car breaks down, I'm in my car. If another car goes in the wrong direction, we still have other cars going to the destination. So, we need the multi-pronged elements, because we're all trying to get to the same place, which is full equality for LGBTQ plus people. And of course, the intersectionality of race and ecology and all the other issues that affect us as human beings moving forward. So I don't have a problem with the lack of collaboration. What the problem is the fight for the very few resources that exist. And you see, when you're a big white NGO, big glossy white NGO, and you are promising all kinds of things and kissing the right butts and making the right noises, you'll get the money, and the rest of us won't. So I think that's where the issue lies. And there needs to be a better sharing of the pot of resources and making sure that when we are doing the work and we don't agree with each other, that there is mutual respect and we don't overstep our boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think we need to acknowledge that the challenges are not similar. You know what I mean? There's that whole sense of acting like we're functioning from equal footage and we're coming to the issues with the same amount of power behind us. And that is just not true. So quite often when a white male person say we're on the same thing, it's a hegemonic view of looking at we're all doing the same thing without being willing to strip back where his power lies, that I won't have and won't ever have, yes, that Jason won't have and won't ever have, sort of saying, it's sort of a way of inserting meritocracy in a situation like, if you do the right things, we can all do the right things, without acknowledging that just by who you are, there's a complete difference to the proposals that you make. Yeah. And it's not, we're not all functioning from the same place. We're not.
The new organization that we're just about to launch in Trinidad and Tobago is looking at all human rights, not just LGBT, because again, as a person of color, but somebody who has passing light-skinned privilege, I recognize that as a queer, light-skinned man of color in the Caribbean, I have a lot less of the challenges that a straight Black person has. I have a lot less of the challenges that Indo-Caribbean straight people have. So, when you look at the situation of human rights in the Caribbean, we are the only region on earth that has suffered over 500 years of successive human rights abuses, from Christopher Columbus killing the first people that he met there, to slavery, then to indentured labor, then to colonialization. So our population
and the Spaniards, only the Spaniards out of it. They desecrated a whole people to the point where the whole set of people disappeared completely from the Caribbean. They killed us all. They killed them all.
So I can't fight for LGBT human rights in the same way that you would, Ashley, in the UK. I have to come at it. I have to lift everybody up with me. Right? That's the only way it's going to work. So the new human rights organization is looking at women. It's looking at decolonization, the narrative. It's looking at refugees. We have had an influx of over 80,000 Venezuelan people because of what is happening in Venezuela into our country. So that, that's a big issue for our nation. So, I have to look at all of these things. I can't just be an LGBT activist. I have to look at rising sea levels. How is that going to affect a small island? So, we have to, this whole concept of intersectionality has become a very dulled buzzword that, we say in meeting rooms and we say at events like this and actually have no concrete meaning because we're not doing the work.
I just want to bring it. Sorry.
It's also sort of what the buzzword of diversity is another one, where I sort of go to a conference and diversity is represented by the fact that a cis panel may have a cis panel of white men, 2 of them are gay, and that's where the diversity lies. And there's this way of the way that things are look on paper doesn't really represent the real lives that people are living.
Mm.
Well, diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice, right? So I think there's a difference between the two. I think a lot of people are using that buzzword of diversity and not actually acting on it.
Yes.
I just want to bring it back to the UK, and obviously the COVID restrictions have meant that a lot of people are isolating, and there are a lot of people, particularly young people, that will be isolating in potentially unsafe environments. So with Pride season coming about, I wondered if there's anything we can be doing in particular to make sure we're reaching those young people. If you'd had any thoughts on that. I know a lot of people have turned to kind of activism on social media and things like that. It's not something I'm particularly good at. But both of you have quite a good presence, and I wondered if that's something that you've been using during this time.
I have, and I always have, as you mentioned. But it's I remember at one point I was doing bedtime stories online because people I was supporting was processing so much trauma that they were not able to sleep. So I used to come on every night at like 10 o'clock and read to them like a mother would. And like other people saw, but nobody knew sort of the real reason behind the scene why I started doing that. So there are always things that if we are interacting and listening to young people, because there's a lot of sort of figuring out what somebody else need, never ever having had a conversation with them, never related to them. And I find that adults have a lot of amnesia about how they were as a young person and what they sort of think that young people need. I kind of go, like, really? Like you were never young? Firstly, I really think we need to have a conversation with people about what they are, because young people will tell you about what the needs are. You know what I mean? In terms of how do we help people to be present, to be part of what is going on. And also that's a big part of where the film comes in, because there's a lot of things that happen that people think are happening for the first time. You know what I mean? Here I am, I'm a young person, I invented sex or whatever. I'm just using that as a placeholder. But people are thinking they've invented things because the intergenerational conversations are not happening. You know what I mean? The transfer of information and the informal way that one thing flows from one place to another, it is just simply not happening. So we have to broker that. We have to break down the barriers that makes us sort of think that young people are not a part of us, and young people will then tell us what they need. You know what I mean? So yes, everything is happening online, so that's the only way we're going to provide. But I think before we sort of start deciding what we can do for young people, We need to find a way to communicate with young people and reach them where they are at and discuss with them what their needs are, what works, and be willing to accept when something doesn't work, just move it. Because there's also that sense of, oh, look at all I did for you. How can you not love it? They don't love it. Get rid of it and do something else.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Become emotionally bonded to our offering without being willing to accept that it's just not working. Move on.
Yes.
One of the things that I'm most proud of with the film is the fact that we were able to partner with Educate and Celebrate, and we've been able to make 9 lesson plans now with the film, which are available to teachers across the UK, and also for assemblies. So now, hopefully, we can kind of tend to that intergenerational discourse, or at least know that we've always been here. These things aren't new. One of the things with I have an issue with the word history, just because it tends to make people think that it's in the past and kind of is only in the past. But actually, a lot of the things that we covered in the film are still existing today. They might not be exact. They might not be the same piece of legislation. It may not be the same health issue, but we are experiencing the same things. We only have to look at Section 28 and the fact that LGBT education, it still isn't a thing, you know, it might not be gay men that are being criminalized, but trans people now are feeling the same brunt that we once were. So I'm not sure where I was going with that point. I think it was an extension of Educate and Celebrate.
It's about ways that the supposed past is very much our current and pulsating present. You know what I mean? It's not anywhere. It's right here beating at the heart of us. And the demographic that is affected, as you said, sometimes is shifted, because trans people are experiencing a whole lot of persecution right now here on the ground that they're being gaslighted about so hard. And it's just an ongoing narrative of anything to undermine the stories, to undermine the pain that people feel, to really try to erode people's humanity. And that's kind of where we've always been. Like, you know, if we tell you you don't exist, or if we treat you like you're an insect, then it's okay to squash you. And that's where we're still at. So we may change the demographic slightly, but that's where we're still at.
Yes.
We're coming towards the end now. I just wonder if there's any points that both of you would like to raise before we do wrap up. Jason, I'm sure you've got a big speech about your...
You know, funnily, I don't. Because I actually spoke about the new organization. We launch it within the next week. We've just done, our projects have already gone on stream. So I was able to raise $16,500 to create a COVID-19 emergency response fund for trans and HIV positive people. Unfortunately, the trans population and HIV positive population were hit the hardest by COVID-19 and the lockdown, because many were sex workers, many had no family support. So we were able to feed and get medication, get people back onto life-saving HIV medication. And, you know, that was through Frontline Aid, so an organization that I work very closely with and are very supportive of me, and were very kind in taking money that was earmarked for other projects and being able to break their rules and regulations and say, no, we understand this is an emergency and we need to help your trans and HIV population. So that's the kind of thing that needs to happen. The global north needs to kind of get off its high horse. And when we have emergency situations and when we have minority populations that are in danger, we have to remove the red tape so that we can get the help to them. I know tonight is a fundraiser for All Out, and All Out are doing similar COVID-19 emergency responses. This is a serious, serious issue around the world. I mean, we may find ourselves in a very serious health crisis as we come out of lockdown, because people have fallen off their HIV medication, and it's not being talked about. And when you talk about people, young people who are being forced back into homophobic homes, we also have an elderly LGBT population who are going into old people's homes and having to go back into the closet. You know, I'm not that far off of going into an elderly home, and I don't know what I'm going to do because I have no family, I have no children, and I don't know where I'm going to end up. And I may end up in a home that's run by homophobic people. I mean, you know, we have to address these issues. And, you know, if we keep focusing on this party part of Pride and not focusing on what's happening in our community and what's happening globally, we're going to end up in a real right mess.
PJ, do you
I just want to remind people that Pride and everything surrounding what Pride is meant to represent is about advancing the rights and freedom of LGBTQ people, and that includes Black people, it includes trans people, it includes children who are trying to find themselves in whatever way, and they include the elders. And the idea of even the way the march is structured is very ableist. It includes disabled people. It's about realizing how many people are on the margins that is in no way accounted for, and it's meant to be a fight. It's meant to be a fight. And while I'm not against a party, dear God, I mean, the only thing that have kept a lot of Black people going is the ability to find joy, to mind joy, to create joy, to be joy. So I'm not saying you shouldn't be joy, but when we are using the idea of it being a party to completely eradicate the political roots, the right to stand for something beyond, hey, it's unacceptable.
Yes.
It really is. And it flies in the face of people who have lost their very lives to make this a thing. You know, when you look at the history of Pride and the reason why people march in costumes, the reason why people undress, and the fact that that is about the way that what people wear was being policed, the way that people were not allowed to be in their bedrooms in private, so I'm gonna bring what I do in my bedroom here in the middle of the street. Now it's like, oh my God, how can you do that? Nobody seems to remember why these things happen.
Yes.
You know, and when you see someone out there marching in their leathers and there is a reason for that. They're not just showing off or trying to let your children look at them. It's a response to the oppression and the way that our lives have been policed to the point of death.
Yes.
But nobody's talking about this. It's just, ooh, let's party and let's drink as much as we can. And it's not great. And it does not say a lot about Britain and the supposed greatness.
Yes.
I think just one point I'd like to make before we do wrap up is that Pride doesn't have to happen just one day in the year, and it doesn't have to be one single march that happens through central London. And I think, if anything, the lockdown or the restrictions anyway will hopefully force us to do is actually, we could just be marching down our local street. If we feel safe enough to show our pride in that moment, that in itself is a challenge to society.
In fact, at the last Gay Liberation Fund meeting, I did offer that suggestion that we decentralize Pride and we do it in our local high street. I hate this ghettoization that Pride creates, where I'm straight, get on the tube or the bus, and I'm straight, then I get to the parade and it's like, ooh, I'm here. No, it's bullshit. It's ghettoizing ourselves. And we need to take Pride into our communities. That's where it really makes a difference. Not on a parade where we're like performing monkeys and people stand behind a barrier cheering us on. With the whole concept of this needs to change. And I really do hope that 2020 brings us into a space where we actually start thinking along these lines and transforming ourselves. LGBT people are so creative. We're so intelligent. We're so smart.
Be open to the discussions when people bring to the table what they're going through. Don't gaslight them. Don't undermine them. Listen and take it into considerations and factor it into how you formulate policies.
Yes.
People are putting a lot of work into it and are losing their lives as a result.
Yes. Agreed.
Well, I thank you both for joining us. I know All Out are very thankful, and I'm glad that we were able to support the amazing work that they're doing. If you are watching, All Out have an incredible schedule lined up for you in the coming weeks. So do check out their website. And if you are able to, please do make a donation to their fundraising. And I thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a great honor, and I know lots of people are watching from Trinidad and Tobago. Hi, Trinidad and Tobago.
Hi, Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.